Natalie Zea, you star in The Detour as Robin, and in season two, which just recently finished airing, we learned a lot more about her past, to say the least. What did you think about exploring this character in greater depth this year?
Um, well, I was really happy to get more airtime because I'm an actress. Not that I didn't have enough the first time around. I was not complaining, certainly, but I think as much as the show is about the core of the family, and it's not just Nate's story. I think that season one was um, kind of the underlying journey was his, and even though it was all of ours, it was maybe sort of told from his point of view. So it was nice to take that baton and get to be kind of the conduit, I guess, for this family and sort of the source material for the wacky adventures of season two.
Now, at the end of season one, it was kind of revealed there's more to Robin than meets the eye. So how much going into shooting season two did you actually know was going to end up being revealed about her? Like, how many details did you get, or did you find out, episode by episode as things went along?
Well, okay, so the very end, the cliffhanger, like the over the rolling credits at the end of season one was the big reveal that Robin was maybe not exactly who she had presented herself to be. That was something that came after we shot the entire series. Jason had gone to Atlanta to do all the previous Leons, and he called and he was like, "So the ending's different. Let me tell you what it is. It's all about you." Because the ending previously was something else, and it was very, very sweet. And I won't say what it was because we may use it again. But it was very different. So I didn't find out until way after we had finished shooting that this is where this was going to go.
How much did they tell you about what the season two arc was going to be when it started? Because it goes to really kind of wild places for Robin, especially.
Yeah, I get tidbits from Jason throughout the season. Throughout season one, I was getting tidbits from him about some of his thoughts about where not just season two would go, but where the entire series would go. And the same happened this season. I'm aware of a lot of just strange pop-up bubbles that are going on in his head whenever they're going off. So how much of that makes it to the page is always a surprise, but he's really good about keeping me informed. And there will be an occasional surprise, which is always kind of nice, but for the most part, nothing's ever like out of the blue when I read it on the page. There, it's at least had some sort of there's been some like incubation of it, and then it ends up maybe going to a different place. But I always kind of know where the source of it.
Now, another big change in season two was, of course, season one had that road trip format to no pun intended, to drive it along. But season two was mostly focused around New York City and then some in Cuba.
Right.
How big a change of that was that in terms of the day-to-day experience, just on set?
Well, I'll tell you what wasn't different, and that is we're a summer show, so we tend to always be sweating our asses off because there's a lot of exteriors, and we're on location. There's no the first season we had no stage. There was zero stage work, and then season two, in order to get the tax incentive for New York State requires that we do, I think, 20% of our work on a soundstage. So we did about that. I don't think we did more than that. So we're very peripatetic, not unlike the show itself. We're always moving, even when we're even within the season. We were going upstate. We were going to Long Island. There were some things in the city, some things in Brooklyn. So that didn't really change it. I mean, it's got a very similar feel, I think, for us, in that we're always on the go. Um, I'm more familiar with New York, so living there was a little easier for me because it wasn't a brand new place and I wasn't pregnant. And so that was slightly easier, although I had a young baby with me, so that was added challenges. But yeah, it's a similar feel, both season 1 and season 2, I think, for us.
Now, the season also introduced James Cromwell as, who, when we meet him, we just think he's Robin's husband, Nate's boss in
Right.
New York. And then, of course, later on in the season, turns out to be Robin's estranged father. When did you find out that was where that was going, or did you know all along? And what was it like to actually finally get to work with him?
We knew all along. We knew very early on. In fact, last May, as early as last May, we were brainstorming who Robin's father could possibly be. We were talking about actors, and we ended up with the most incredible. I mean, he is a tall drink of water, that guy, and he's so great. He's just such a pro. I mean, of course he's a pro. Like, what an asshole he would be if he wasn't a pro, having done it for as long as he's done it. Very beloved. And he's so good. We got really lucky. We couldn't believe he said yes, because, he's this very sort of respected film actor. And when he watched the show and finally said yes, he told Jason, he said, I love the show because it's like commedia. And of course, because he's theatrically trained and he would find some way to make it fancy. So we felt really, really fortunate that we were able to stunt cast in such a classy way with him.
And it's so interesting because, as you mentioned, he's so well respected, and to see him in, which it feels like very going against type for
Yeah.
him. Like, you don't really see him as this kind of foul mouthed, kind of rude and borderline evil kind of guy.
Yeah.
What was that like, going back and forth to him on set and then him in a scene just kind of spewing off?
It was great. I mean, I had never seen. I'm sure. Look, again, he's very seasoned, so I'm sure he's gotten to do all kinds of roles. But for the mass public, we see him as sweet Jimmy Cromwell, who plays like the nice grandpa. So it was such a pleasure. But he's so good at doing whatever it is that he does. You just throw anything at him, and he's brilliant. So it was great. And it was great to get to know him. He's so larger than life, not only physically, but just as a presence. I felt like he really did bring a lot of dignity to the set.
Robin's father, towards the end of the season, ends up kidnapping her children and bringing them to Cuba, as is known to happen sometimes. Did you actually shoot scenes in Cuba for those episodes?
Well, we were set to go. We had permits, and we had plans, and we had plane reservations, and everything was all ready. And then it didn't work out. And I don't know how much I'm allowed to say. It wasn't on our part. It was Cuba. They said, never mind. So we had to scramble. I think it was about 3 weeks before we were supposed to leave, maybe 4. It was less than a month before we were supposed to leave. And so a few of the producers and a couple of the crew members went to Puerto Rico and did some scouting. And they were like, "This will do, I guess," because we were really in a pinch. So I was very much looking forward to going, as were most of the crew. But Puerto Rico was lovely.
Yeah, well, I mean, these characters, this family, ends up finding themselves in any number of unusual places. So I wouldn't be surprised if somehow there will be another Cuba connection along the way.
I mean, right? Yeah, it could happen.
Just plan the show for wherever you and
Where we want to go on vacation. Yeah.
yeah, basically wherever you want to go. It's like, oh, there are misadventures in Tahiti all of a sudden.
Trust me, I've tried, and Jason's answer is always, "Well, Tahiti's not funny." Okay, but it is. It can be.
Well, at the end of the season, we do get what may be a bit of hint of things to come. They're in what maybe Alaska or some other cold
Something like that. Yeah.
place. That maybe we might. Do you have you? I don't expect you to reveal, obviously, but do you already know like where things might be going in season 3?
I know physically, geographically where we are. I know very little else. Well, no, that's not true. I do. I know. That's not true. I know the overall arc of the season, unless it changes, which often it does. But yeah, I have inklings, which no, I'm not gonna tell.
Obviously, we wouldn't want you to, because obviously we're looking forward to it next year.
Yeah.
Now, an interesting thing that happened when the children were kidnapped is that you and Jason Jones had your characters were on their way to get them back, and so you got a lot of scenes between the two of them, where we got to explore them as them as a married couple, apart from their kids. Did that dynamic feel different working, getting to work one-on-one with those two characters like that?
No, because I mean, we do it so often. If you'll notice, this season, the kids tended to be somewhat separate from from us. So Jason and I actually got to do a lot of stuff one-on-one this year, which I think is, if I do say so myself, I think is where the show really shines, is watching these two completely dysfunctional weirdos have to deal with each other in ways that I find to be excruciatingly identifiable. I think it's really, really relatable the way these two people talk to each other and deal with each other. And I think that's what makes the show work, because if it's one thing to have funny, like lots of funny and really big funny, but if there's not something or somebody that you can deeply relate to, it's just like after a while it just becomes the same old shit.
This season also introduced Robin's ex, who turned out to be her still current husband, played by Jeffrey Vincent Parise. What was it like introducing that whole other dynamic to the show as well this season?
It was fun. Jason tends to get a little method when he acts. So he was funny when Jeffrey and I we had this huge dance sequence that ended up getting cut down to like almost nothing. But we had to spend the entire day. We did rehearsals for days and days, and we ended up devoting a whole like half day, which on our show a half day is like a year and a half, to this sort of cat and mouse dance. And Jason's character walks in on us and gets jealous, and so as we were shooting it, he's like, I don't like this. I don't like you being with him. It's really throwing me off, because we're so very much a family, and we're so entrenched in these characters and these relationships that sometimes you do it does tend to bleed over. So it was great. I think it was great for Jason for his acting chops, because he got to kind of explore this other dynamic of the character.
And then the show, for most of the season was framed by these scenes of Robin and Nate being interrogated, and gradually we figured out that it was by the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, led by Lauren Urbanski. Did you shoot those scenes mostly all at once to be woven through, or
all at once? Yeah, it was the same as last year. Jason did his alone, and it was after the fact, same as this year. And the reason I was not present was because I couldn't travel because of my condition. So he took the reins last year, and this year, of course, this year he's like, the previously ons will be all about you. So he like gives me 2, and he decides to join me for the rest because they can't stay away. So that's, yeah, I mean, it's after we shoot everything, and it's a great framing device, but it needs to be kind of after the fact, because we need to know like what gets cut. There's tons that get cut, and sometimes you need to use those scenes as almost an explanation if there are certain things that exposition that's not quite in there. So yeah, we do that way after the fact, after editing has kind of gotten a hold of the episodes.
One of the things that's good about the Detour and a lot of modern sitcoms I've noticed is that, you know, in more old-fashioned shows with family dynamics, you would often get the wife would be very straight-laced and the husband would be a little bit more wild. And this show, you know, both of your characters get to be outlandish, and in fact, Robin actually has a wilder side, it turns out, than Nate. What did you think about that? What did you think about that balance shift for you know, this show and these characters, and just in general seeing that on a sitcom format?
That's why I took the job, because I had never seen that really before. I mean, I know I'm sure it's out there. I mean, because television, there's 5 million shows, and you know, there's nothing original anymore. But I hadn't personally, certainly as an actress being offered a role, had never encountered anything like that. You know, especially in a comedy. But it was hard enough just to be considered for comedies, much less one as good as this and as funny as this. So it just felt like something I absolutely could not say no to. And I think that as Jason's gotten to know me, he's felt even more freedom to push the limits of that, and to let those. The first thing he said to me when I spoke to him, because I read the script the day before Thanksgiving, so I was out of town and it was a holiday, and so we spoke on the phone on Thanksgiving, and but he's Canadian, so it didn't matter for him. He said the one thing that I want to be very clear about the Robin character is I'm not interested in likability. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. That's all you had to say.
And this season ran the gamut in terms of storylines and you know, outlandish developments. Did you have a favorite moment or episode from season 2 to shoot, or that you were especially, you know, excited or proud about how it came out?
Yeah, I am especially thrilled about the episode called The Tub. The one, it's all shot in the apartment. We shot it entirely on the stages, I believe, for the most part. And it's like maybe like 4 or 5 scenes, and they're just these long scenes of ridiculous, disgusting, wonderful, frank, horrible things happening in every scene, and in different degrees. Some are psychologically horrible, and some are physically horrible and too much to watch. But I think it's such a fine piece of television, in my opinion. And I've actually seen that episode, I think, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, there's so much, you know, so much insane, you know, comedy on the show, from, you know, the home birth, you know, to exploding cows and, you know, eye gonorrhea. You know, is there anything, and most of it a lot befalling Jason Jones, I should say.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of situation or event or scene that popped up in a script where it kind of even took you by surprise, or
all the time? Every time I open a script, I'm like, oh my God, we can't do this. We're not going to be able to do this. And he's like, we're going to try. And 9 times out of 10, we get away with it. Yeah, I mean, what's a good example of that? I mean, this is just one of many examples, but in the last, I believe it's the last episode or second to last, where my children just spew profanities at me. I'm like, Jason, nobody's gonna let this happen. And then he was like, oh, you should have seen what I wrote before. It was way worse. And he told me what it was. I'm not gonna say, but I'm like, oh, okay, this is fine. So even he's pulling back when he writes the things that make me think that there's no way we're going to do it. And we almost always do. We almost always shoot it. Oh, I mean, we always shoot it, and we almost always get it on the air.
Yeah, I all of a sudden just desperately want a director's cut of that scene to see what could have been.
I mean, there were so many great, you know, Jason's not a fan of deleted scenes at all. But he actually said this year that there's so many scenes that he would love to compile and let people see, because we had to cut for time, you know, we just overshot like we always do. And a lot of it's really real. I mean, obviously very over the top.
Well, I want to congratulate you again on season 2 of the Detour, and looking forward to season 3. It was just recently renewed.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for talking with me.
Of course. Thank you.